Moin moin, hello there ladies and gentlemen, Donspektor here today with another TWS review, and I have for you the Rose Technics Ceramics X. Yes, thank you very much again Rose Technics for sending this over for review. As usual, the disclaimer here, they have not asked, influenced or did anything else to tell me what to do, and all thoughts here are exactly my own, and I will not spare with criticisms when there are criticisms. And usual, the unboxing and the packaging accessories. That's a box. Pretty standard affair for TWS. You have a bit of information at the back here about latency, what it can, and yeah, this also is IPX5 water resistant. And when we remove this, for which they give you this flap here so you can actually pull it out. Nice attention to detail, I like that. In here would be the TWS, which I have removed because yeah, it has been out for review for a few weeks. And then we have the manual. Here are the ear tips, which I don't think I have in here. Give me a moment. As I said, here are the ear tips. You get S, M, and L here. And actually, yeah, the ear tips, small spoiler here for comfort, actually pretty good. Most TWS I usually have worse ear tips. These here are relatively squishy, but not as thin as others. And they have a slight mantle, like a slight mantle around the outlet here, so they actually stay very safe in your ear. And yeah, I had no problems with the included ear tips here. I think these are pretty damn good. And other than that, the other accessory you get here is a short USB A to C cable. It's a USB A to C cable. Strain releases don't work, but it's fine. Like, you probably have like a dozen of them already, so it will just get its job done. And that's it. Packaging accessories for the price, I think, is absolutely acceptable. Like, this is exactly what I would expect at a $50 TWS here. And yeah, that's what you also get. And then we come to build quality. And yeah, I throw the charging case here in first. That's a charging case. And as you can see, it has this white, shiny, almost pearl-esque style here. That is pretty unique. I don't think I've seen other TWS going for something similar. Of course, the Apple stuff, right, that is just plain white, but not this pearl white. That is definitely new. Printing quality on here, absolutely well done. Like, this is a high quality printing. And overall, this is feeling well in the hand. It is, I would say, about on par with the ear-free i3, which I have here. And in terms of weight, well, it's a bit lighter than the Buds 2 Pro. And also have the Capsule 2 Pro here, or Capsule 3 Pro, I forgot. Those are definitely lighter and they feel a bit more flimsy as in case. However, what you can already see at the back, this thing here is a hinge made out of plastic. While, for instance, the i3 here use a plastic hinge, a metal hinge. That's definitely what I would like to see as well. Metal just more lasting for a moving part, and yeah, should generally be the better choice. But other than that, it does open well. It stays not open, as you can see, just closes again if you lean it. But it is usually fine. And also the magnets keep it closed well enough. The Buds 2 Pro here is comparison direct. Like, they do a better job. They have a bit stronger magnets. They also stay open. But price-wise, this is like half of what these cost at the moment. So is it not a fair comparison? Other than that, you have a USB-C charger at the bottom. That seems to be well integrated. There's no funky stuff here. It's not rocking. It's just exactly what it's supposed to do. And a pairing button that I have never pressed accidentally in my time using it. It takes a bit of force to actually press. And it's ever so lightly recessed. That means you won't press, or at least I have not been able to press it accidentally in my pocket. So charging case, absolutely fine. But as I said, the hinge, I would wish it would be metal. And then on the inside, you can see this is a slightly off-tone bluish white here, or more white-blue. And yeah, then let me remove the butt. Charging contacts here and here. Generally, this magnet keeps them in place well. They don't rock around too much. For instance, again, the Buds 2 Pro, they rock definitively a bit more, as you can see here. Like, this is not as stable in there as it's here. Also, the i3 here, which I have, they are also way more prone to rock around in the case than the ceramics. And I like the little tolerances they have here. So, that means also they charge well here. Like, I never had a problem with them charging in the case. You literally just flip them in and they charge. That's absolutely fine. So overall charging case, I would say for the price, absolutely appropriate. I just, again, wish this would be a metal hinge. And then let's come to the buds themselves. That's the bud. That's, As you can see, it goes for something that is not exactly ergonomic, but more ergonomic than, for instance, what we have here with the i3, which copy the toothbrush head AirPods design, which I'm absolutely not a great fan of. This one here looks a bit like the Sennheiser TWS, you've seen them before. But that means also, generally, for me, these fit way better than the i3 here. Like, these were okay with the right tips that I couldn't fit in this case no more than. They were okay, but these generally fit, even with the included tips, absolutely without any issues. And there's already comfort, but yeah, let's come back to the actual build quality. I think for the price of like 50 bucks, this is fine. As you can see, there's a clearly well-defined seam around here. You can feel it, you can see it. It's not the greatest, but compared to other TWS, like the Samsung Galaxy Buds 3 Pro for, I think, 4 times the price, yeah, they have a similar seam here, and they also feel similar in its overall build quality. So I guess either the Samsung Galaxy Buds 3 Pro are really dog shit, which they are, or this is just exactly how it should be for 50 bucks here with ceramics. Like, as I said, this is like the seam could have been smaller, and for instance here with the ear-free, eye-free, this feels overall a bit better because the seams are less pronounced. The plastic seems to be a bit more sturdy, but overall for this price point, actually this is okay. Like, you shouldn't have any issues with this build-wise. One thing that I'm not so sure about is the nozzle. That is a relatively thin plastic, and we can see that because it's really transparent. So we can see how thin the plastic is here, and I'm not sure how long that will hold up, just because the plastic is pretty damn thin. The front mesh here though is, as you can see, well enough integrated. It's very thin, so you can see directly through. But what I do like is that the actual plastic inlet that they use here is not round, like I have seen with, for instance, with much more expensive items where they just glue in a round nozzle without any structure and it just falls out over time. Looking at you, Pennon, this one here, as you can see, it is not round beneath. This is oval shaped, so that means it doesn't rotate. It should stay in here nicely. I just wish the plastic would be a bit thicker. This is a bit on the thin side. And other than that, yeah. The L&R indicator here is kind of stamped in, unfortunately not color-coded, so yeah, that could be a bit better. But readability generally is working, and also the charging contacts being integrated here absolutely worked without any issue, like totally fine. There's here a tuning hole, I assume. This is not for microphone purposes, my best guess at least. I think this is probably integrated here, where you also have an LED in there. And yeah, build-wise overall with the printing quality on top, and I think this is totally price adequate here. Like, there isn't much to criticize for this price point, and that's pretty damn good. Next, let's come to comfort, which I had already spoiled a few times. Yeah, this is a very comfortable TWS for me. It is not exactly semi-custom. As you can see, this is more like a bit like a blob, and then they try to put in a nozzle here. But it's again one of those things. Rose Techniques so far has been doing a really good job as soon as they design and case themselves, which they have not for the i3, that's just AirPods copy. But here, this one actually is fitting me very well. Like, the insertion angle is well chosen, and also the nozzle length could be a bit longer, but because you actually get a real nozzle, it's actually inserting well enough and it stays safe. And that means I use the S ear tips here, and those fit me just like a glove. Like, there's no issue with these, it fits safely. I could do some light sports with this without any issues. It just fits pretty damn well. Even compared to the much more expensive Buds 3 Pro here, 2 Pro, sorry, definitely fits better here. I would take these in any day of the week in terms of comfort and fit. The ear tips I used on this most of the time actually are the included ones, but you could also get away with some, the SpinFit CP360 would work with this one. Also the X Elastics too, the SpinFit Omni, like basically everything that you can fit in the case will fit your ear here, because the general design of the shell is pretty damn well chosen. Next we come to isolation. And as you probably have guessed by my other reviews, this is partly passive isolation and partly active. And first, passive. I mean, as I said it already with the i3 here, like, I think I have the problem with most TWS passively, they just don't isolate well. And that's the same issue with the Ceramics X. So that means without ANC, this is definitively in below average isolating AEM at best. Even if you put on foam tips here, where I have here the BGVP foam tip, which fits in the case and on here, even with this, it's below average isolating, and it means you actually need ANC. And then comes to the second problem. While it advertises a 55 decibel ANC performance, I don't know how they got to these values. It's definitely not 55 decibels. It does isolate, or ANC is working better with the on the ceramics than on the i3, and it's working better than on the Capsule 3 Pro. but it's working far inferior compared to the Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. And yes, I know, according to measurements on RTings and Sound Guys, these perform really good in terms of ANC. Not the best, but really good still, so it's maybe not fair to compare. But yeah, ANC is passable, but it it's not enough for busy city centers, or if you actually walk out on main road, it just won't give you enough isolation there. And yeah, one thing though that Rose Technics has included here, but there's also a selling feature for this, is wind noise isolation or wind cancellation. And okay, Rose Technics, I have no clue how you did this. Actually, I wrote this also in my written review. I don't know how they managed to completely cancel wind noises, but it's actually working. I was really surprised when I got this out. And of course, it's summer at the moment here in Germany, so it's not the most windy situations, but I was lucky at that day. We had rain, and usually before rain, like you get in like windy or like wind situations before that. And I was walking outside, and I first had ANC on, it was and then I put on wind cancellation and the wind was gone. I don't know how they managed this, but it's actually working. It could be that maybe they just have a small mechanical thing inside that just closes the mic hole here. Don't know how they do it, but it's actually working. And that means if you're looking for something that I would not recommend you using while biking, but you could use this while biking, because this will definitively cancel the wind noises around you pretty damn efficiently. And it means, yeah, for everyday commute, I think this is absolutely fine. Like, it could be better in terms of ANC performance, but thankfully, because it also isolates wind, this should be good enough in most situations out there. And then we come to software. And yeah, I have looked at the i3, which uses the same software as the Ceramics X a few weeks ago. And that means, as you can probably have guessed if you have saw my other review, the software is very much development in progress. That means there's like regular updates. I think like weekly or bi-weekly you get another update. Sometimes they change layouts a bit. Sometimes they add new functions. And that means also some of the criticisms I had before, when you get greeted with a Chinese text at the beginning, yeah, that has been fixed. That's now English. And a few other things have also been fixed. So I assume there's still more issues with the software, which I have not figured out now. But I'm pretty sure they will fix this in the next coming weeks or months, and it should be better then. But just want to say, there's probably more things to be done there, and it can very much be that you encounter some bugs with the software. But everything I used it for worked fine, so you can rebind the controls of the touch surface, and you can rebind basically most of the gestures that it has. Unlike the Buds 2 or Buds 3 Pro, which don't give you shit as options, well, you can do this here. Alternatively, you can activate if it was supposed to be LDAC. Yeah, this supports LDAC. Very nice Rose Techniques, like that. Or multi-device support. I'm not sure why you have to choose either. Like, I have had other TWS at more expensive price points that could do both. I'm not sure why this is the case here. So you have to decide if you want multi-device or LDAC. But I like that it's actually included. So I just paired it with my laptop and my smartphone, and it worked without any issues there. And yeah, other than that, you can choose a rudimentary EQ. I'm using EQ here in quotes because you can only select hi-fi, pop, and rock. And when we talk about the sound later, I will throw you on measurements. So yeah, overall, I think the software is pretty good for the price. I really wish they would give me a real EQ. You can keep the profiles for pop, rock, and hi-fi in there, but just give me, I don't know, like an 8 filter, a 10 filter, a 16 filter EQ. Let me just do my own EQing with it and keep the standard profiles in there. That's fine, but let me actually fix things if they need to be fixed. So yeah, next we talk about usability and use cases. Yeah, usability generally with this thing, absolutely without any flaws. I've been using this regularly for at least 2 weeks, more like 2.5, 3 weeks. And also my girlfriend has used it, and we had no issues with this in terms of usability. That means you can use this every day, like it does everything fine, taking calls, like generally calling, absolutely without any issues here, switching ANC on and off, going to pass through, like everything really, it's just working fine. And that combined with the battery life that they claim is 10 hours, which unfortunately I have not been able to test if it actually is 10 hours, because that's more than a work day. And yeah, in my work day, when I work 8 hours and I use this all day, there's a light gap in between for like 30 minutes where I have not been using them. So it has brought me through all of my work day, the entire 8 hours. So that means, I guess it's probably correct with 10 hours here, but it could also be 9 hours or a bit less than that. I can't tell you because it brings me through all of my workday without any issues. And that means actually, yeah, subjectively evaluated, this is a very good runtime here, like no issues there. Yeah, one word though for game mod. I don't know if it actually does something. I have tried game mod on my computer. I didn't notice any improvement. That means I would not recommend this for actual gaming. There is definitely light latency there, and that can be a make or break feature in competitive shooters. But for casual gaming, even without game mod, this is fine. Like, you shouldn't have any issues. This is a modern Bluetooth protocol, and yeah, I think advertised, what was it, 54 milliseconds of latency or so. That's okay. Like, you will be fine for casual gaming. And yeah, other than that, yeah, as I said, strong point of this is comfort and fit and the wind noise cancelling. And that brings me then to the actual use cases of this. I can see this actually being used for light sports. Light sports in a sense, but it's not very dynamic. So I probably wouldn't play rugby or basketball with it. I think it's not fitting well enough for that. But if you do, I don't know, if you go for a jog, that should be fine. If you go biking, if you do weightlifting, or what I do, body weight training, yeah, I think this is absolutely working there flawlessly, and also helped by the fact that this has IP54 water resistance, so it should also survive your sport without any issues. Second use case I can see about this, but a bit less important than the first one, that is like for sport, is commuting. Because, yeah, while this, as I said, has not the best ANC, the ANC is working, and it will reduce your surroundings pretty goodish. And yeah, so commuting, second most important use case. And actually, I think this is actually very good for sport. Especially, again, wind noise cancelling is working well. So yeah, that is a nice feature to have. And now let's come to the core of this review. And this is sound. And yeah, for sound, I will again usually give you the general characteristics of this. And this is definitively a V-shaped IEM. That means it has mid-bass, it has lower treble, and it generally comes off as brightish in the treble there. And I will mostly compare this to the Buds 2 Pro. Although I will also throw in a few measurements, for instance, versus the ear-free, eye-free. But I think I use the Buds 2 Pro because they are a benchmark for TWS for a reason, because they are very well tuned. And so we start with upper treble, and yeah, the graph is indicating there's a huge spike at like 17K or 16K. This is not there to my ears. I think this is, again, like the coupler past 10K is not that accurate. It's like, I think 13 or 14K you get a bit of energy and not much after that. And that means while you do get some splash and sizzle on top, it's not the greatest resolving IEM in general. So yeah, trumpets and cymbals where, for instance, they come off as yeah, detailed, but there's a problem. You can see in the graph a huge 10K peak. Well, this is, I think, partly an artifact. I'm pretty sure this is how this inserts. I'm pretty sure this partly shifts resonance peak that is at 8K to 10K. So yeah, this is partly resonance peak, but it is existing. Like, there's a peak in this region. That means you do get some unnatural tonality there. Like, it comes off as a bit weird sounding. And I'm pretty sure this is fixable via EQ. If Rose Technics would give us EQ, I would say if you reduce 10K by 5 decibels, this would be a decently well-tuned IEM for the treble there, because yeah, you do get some past 10K without being too much. So yeah, trailing ends are pronounced, leading edges also relatively decently audible. And yeah, that means combined with the mid-treble region, which as you can see by graph here, is also relatively bright. Again, please keep in mind that the graph I throw this on here in comparison is very different. So what you actually see here, the comparison between the Buds 2 Pro and the Buds 3 Pro, is not the most fair, because this generally comes off as more bright to me, the Ceramics X. Yeah, because yeah, I have to choose one point where the graphs interact, and here I choose 1K. But if you would choose something a bit lower, then you can see that this one is generally more bright through the entirety of its treble. And that means if you don't like bright TWS, this will not be for you. It is coming off as more bright also in the mid-treble. The peak at like 4.5, 4.7K is not exactly 5K, and also helped by this is that the actual like highest treble energy on the lower treble here is at 2.5K. So that means you're absolutely okay, even if you're sensitive to 5K. 5K shouldn't come off as overly pronounced. but I just want to say it generally comes off as more bright, and the huge amount of energy at 2.5K it's just too high, I think, for most people. For me personally, I didn't find this shouty, I didn't find this unpleasant. I just think it's a bit too bright, so it costs you some body, for instance, for female vocals, but you do get back as clarity. So this comes off as very clear for female vocals in, for instance, the Nier Automata or the Cyberpunk soundtrack. Very clear vocals, but the body is just not there. It just sounds a bit unnatural. But again, if you are sensitive to shout, these will absolutely come off as shouty to you. And I would recommend Rose Techniques here. I would tune down 2.5K by like 2 decibels at least. Maybe go for 3 decibels. And yeah, then also lower 10K. That is, I think, the biggest issues with this. The 5K peak or the 4.7K or 4.5K, I would also lower a tiny bit, and then you also lower the 2.5K one, but that's just a smidge. It should be fine then. That brings me to mids. And yeah, you can see the graph, right? This is a V-shaped IEM, and well, the driver here is actually relatively decent. I think the ear 3 i3 has a better driver to my ear. So that means while the mids are not the greatest, and I wouldn't describe them as absolutely recessed, they are slightly recessed. That means if the track that you're listening to is not that well mixed, you will have the issue that, yeah, the vocalist will just be a bit lost in the mix. It will just be a bit like, yeah, lost in overall presentation. The presence is a bit down. And if you have well mixed tracks, this shouldn't be an issue too much. But still, I would love to see the mids being a bit more clear overall here. Lower mids, on the other hand, I mean, if you do like warm lower mids, this will give you warm lower mids. Growls and bass guitars here come off as very well bodied, and yeah, they are actually a bit forward in that sense. It's not my favorite presentation, but overall, I think you should be fine with the lower mids here. They are not too bleedy, and the mids are fine enough. And brings me to bass. And one thing first, you can see some weird artifacts in the bass in my measurement here. I'm not sure why they're there. I just don't perceive them. So that means this comes off as a relatively bassy IEM to my ear, and that means you have a pretty decent amount of mid bass and sub bass, and it can punch relatively well. And I don't think I had much criticisms in terms of overall bass quantity or quality at this price point. So most of my metal and synthwave in library, and also some jazz that uses some bass drums, actually work very well here, and I don't think I can find you anything that is really worth criticizing in mid or upper bass here. Again, if you come back to like mids, it bleeds a bit into mids, and it could be a bit more clear here, but it's not as bad as the graph might look like. And then yeah, sub bass, yeah, this is average in terms of sub bass. My benchmark track is from Interstellar's Mountains here, that has a bass note that starts at like 2 minutes 10, and it drops to like 2 minutes 16, to starting at like I think 70 or 80 hertz, and it rolls all the way to 20 hertz. And very well done IEMs managed it until 2 minutes 16, and this one managed 2 minutes 14. They already calculated a bit of Bluetooth delay in, so it's just very average without having too many issues whatsoever. Next, Soundstage layering and imaging, and this is apparently using a, and I quote here, carbon nanotube diaphragm. In theory, that means that it's pretty good driver in terms of technicalities. In real life, I think the ear 3 i3 here does a better job in terms of technicalities, which in turn does a way better job in the Capsule 3 Pro, which in turn was worse than the Buds 2 Pro. So I think in terms of resolution here that you have to a driver, I think this is a pretty competent driver, and I would put it probably between Buds 2 Pro and ear 3 i3. That means, yeah, as said, Soundstage layering and imaging is actually relatively well pronounced here. And I don't have any issues, like the stage size is actually for an IEM pretty decent. You have usually only 3 distinct layers, but at least they come off as distinct there. And also the imaging is rock solid, and yeah, that means I don't think I can criticize anything here in this department. Bringing me then to separation, dynamics, coherence, and timbre. And in comparison to the ear 3 i3, which I will throw you on in graph again, I mean, this is, i3 is a bit of a mess in terms of graph, and it doesn't sound as bad as the graph, but still this one comes off as overall the better timbre, a better coherent IEM to me. Again, there's an issue with a huge 10K peak. This gives it some unnatural like shimmer, some unnatural on top that you don't want. But overall, it's absolutely fine in terms of coherence and timbre. Yeah, dynamics also, this is coming off as relatively dynamic. Not as dynamic as the i3, but definitively more dynamic than the Buds 2 Pro. And separation, on the other hand, is also absolutely fine for the price point. For like $50, I actually think this is pretty competent in terms of separation. And I have here other IEMs that are a bit cheaper but don't separate as well, but are better tuned. And that brings me then to the verdict. I think Rose Technics almost got a recommendation with this one. The Ear3 i3 was just very off in terms of tuning to me, and also the comfort and fit could have been a bit better. And here, this is definitively a very well-fitting TWS for me. It fits relatively secure, and the wind noise cancelling working so well. Like, really, it's one of those cases where if you really want to use it outside and you know the risks of using it, because if you use in TWS, you will not hear your surroundings that well, and that means you have a higher risk of accidents. So I will really not recommend them to use outside. But if you bike somewhere where it's safe, like literally dedicated bike lanes or in a forest or anywhere, I think this can be recommended for use cases where you want to do some sports that are not the most dynamic. Because it is sweat and water resistant there, and it fits relatively well, and the wind noise cancelling also working pretty well. So I can see it for these use cases, and that's what I said, an almost recommendation for me. Because the issue is, generally, as I said, I would not recommend them to use for sports, just because I'd rather be safe when listening to music while doing it. You personally probably can get away with it if you are careful, but I just don't want to risk it for myself. And that means also, because the tuning here is solid, it's not the greatest, as I said, but it's pretty damn solid here. And criticism-wise, in terms of like what I would change, as I said before, I would reduce the 2.5 3K peak by 2-3 decibels, and then also with 5K peak by 1 decibel, and then 10K peak by like 5 decibels. If you would do that, I think this would be a very competent TWS that still maintains its V-shaped character without being too bleedy. And also what I really would like to see is, as I said, EQ. Let me fix this via EQ. Like, if this would have EQ in the app, honestly, I think I would recommend it. Because I could just fix the issues without any problem here and just use it every day without the issues and be absolutely fine. Because the driver here is also relatively well done. So again, for summary here, then yeah, for $50, I think this is a solid TWS and doesn't have too many bigger flaws here. And yeah, you can actually use it, I think, for sports relatively reasonably, and for commuting, yeah, the ANC should be a bit better. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, if you have recommendations, if you have criticisms, please leave a comment. Donspektor out.